All right, everyone, we'll just go ahead and get started for the evening. Just wanted to tell everyone thank you for joining us on a Friday evening. There are a lot of conferences going on right now. I can think of a few. But either way, this panel is going to be very helpful and hopefully provide resources and information to anyone who needs it. So we will be recording this and uploading it so anyone can watch at a later time and will be easy accessible to anyone who needs information. So once again, just thanks so much for joining on a Friday evening to discuss pathways to higher education for formerly incarcerated students. My name is Natasha Torres, and I am the Special Populations Coordinator at New York State Higher Education Services. We're New York State's financial aid agency, and we administer over a dozen grants and scholarships to help students pay for the cost of higher education. We want to make sure higher education is a possibility for all students, including those who have been incarcerated. So in New York State specifically, there are many resources, pathways, and support systems in place to help these students achieve higher education. New York State has plenty of prison education programs, which are located across correctional facilities statewide and in partnership with strong colleges and universities. But tonight's panel specifically will focus on supporting formerly incarcerated students in attaining higher education. We have a wonderful team of panelists here with us tonight who are experts in their field and really passionate and here to advocate for education to access to education. So our wonderful panelists include Rachel Sander, the Executive Director for the Office of Higher Education in Prison at SUNY. We have Nikita Van Story, the Senior Director of Programs and Services for the John Jay Institute of Justice and Opportunity. And we also have Tina Lee, the Director of Education at Youth Justice Network. So I want to say thank you to them specifically as well for joining us on a Friday night to tell us all about the amazing resources and support systems in place for these students. So why don't we go ahead and get started? To begin, I would love if the panelists could tell us a little bit more about themselves, and including your connection to students who are formerly incarcerated and your connection to the event tonight. Nikita, would you like to get started for us?
Sure, no problem. Thank you for having me, and happy Friday, everyone. Thank you for joining us. So as mentioned, my name is Nikita Van Story. I am the Senior Director of Programs and Services at the Institute for Justice and Opportunity that is part of John Jay College of Criminal Justice. And very specifically, we're part of CUNY, which is the City University of New York. There's 24 different colleges across the 5 boroughs in New York City. It's considered to be the largest and most diverse public university system in the country, serving over 240,000 students per year, particularly those who are under-resourced and they have several, different barriers and things, adult educators, and specifically individuals who are impacted by the criminal legal system. Nationally, we're recognized for advancing access and equity in different programs. And at the Institute, very specifically, we are on the campus of John Jay, but we work with all students in New York City who are impacted, coming home from incarcerated. And we have, we at this intersection between policy and advocacy and direct work. We do have a program in Otisville State Prison where we do our prison to college pathways. We call it P2CP. And then we do reentry services. We have different programs for supervisors who work with individuals who are formerly incarcerated. And then we have programming for those who want to get into fields of human services and or they just want to get into higher education or different careers with the support and of our success coaches and our team at the Institute. Basically, we're here to make sure that we give that support and that stability so that individuals can move forward. So that is me. I look forward to sharing more with you.
Yes, we're so excited to hear more about all the information and services that CUNY and John Jay Institute has to offer. Rachel, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself as well?
Sure. Thanks so much, Natasha. Honored to be here. My name is Rachel Sander. I'm Executive Director of SUNY's Office of Higher Education and Prison. I'm based here at SUNY System Administration, and my office works with the SUNY schools that have higher education and prison programs. So we have about 20 campuses that are delivering degree programs in 24 state prisons, 1 federal facility in New York State, and about 6 of the juvenile facilities through OCFS. And our office also provides academic reentry support for individuals leaving incarceration. So we do academic reentry planning with students when they're 6 months from release inside the facility, getting them ready to come out. But we also have a public facing service. So if you are just formally incarcerated and looking to relocate, to re-enroll or enroll for the first time in SUNY, we have academic reentry navigators across the state who will help work with you to do that. So I'm excited to share more. I've been with SUNY for 6 years, but I've been in the field of higher ed and prison for about 13 years in New York State. Before coming to SUNY, I was with Hudson Link for Higher Education, a great regional nonprofit down in Westchester. And then before that, I was with Marymount Manhattan College, which ran the program at Bedford Hills. So yeah, really excited to be here and talking about this subject with HESC and the attendees of this webinar.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. And Tina, would you like to tell us a little bit about your organization and your connection to supporting students as well?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Tina Lee. I'm the Education Director at Youth Justice Network. We are an advocacy organization in New York City who we work with 16 to 24-year-olds who are justice involved. A lot of times that means they're coming home from Rikers or upstate. I am really focused on HSE or high school equivalency because I think it's a really important but often overlooked step in the pathway to college or post-secondary education. About 60% of a little bit over 60% of the young people we work with do not have a secondary degree, but I know a lot of them are interested in college. So that's why I'm here. I figure there's probably more than just the people I work with who need a diploma. So thank you for having me.
Thank you all so much. We have a wonderful team here tonight to answer your questions. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat. We may answer some of them as they come up. And for the rest of them, we'll probably try and get to them at the end for a question and answer portion of tonight's event. We are recording as well, and we'll be sure to share the link with you all so you can look back. Okay, everyone, so why don't we just go ahead and get started. So tonight's event is about accessing higher education. So beginning your higher education journey can be overwhelming. Can our panelists share with us what they believe the first steps students should take when looking into higher education after they've been incarcerated? And your history and your opinion? Maybe Tina, do you want to start for us?
Sure. I'll talk about it in terms of if you are someone who's returning from incarceration or justice involvement and you don't have a high school diploma complete, but you're interested in college or, just possibly want to keep it as an option. The first step is obviously you need to get your HSC diploma, high school equivalency. Sometimes it's called the GED because the GED is a test that you take to get this high school equivalency diploma. So I would say the first step is find an HSC program that is really designed to meet your specific needs and interests and skills. And what I mean by that is there's tons of GED programs out there. Not all of them are super focused on what is your pathway after you get your diploma. And not all of them are focused on what special skills and interests are you bringing into this program. So find an HSC program that is really interested in your future after this program and also interested in what you're bringing to the table. So I would say my organization, Youth Justice, is an example of an organization. If you need an HSC diploma, come here. But if we're not working for you, that's totally fine. And we have connections and partnerships with other organizations. And I always recommend Nikita's organization, John Jay. We've had students get connected with them for their college exploration program. But yeah, we have HSC programs across the city with CUNY. I think that's a really dependable source if you're not sure about where to go. And just keep in mind that it's a path. It's a long path. It might seem overwhelming at times, but it's step by step, and there are people who want to support you at every step. You just have to find them and reach out to them.
Yes, thank you so much, Tina. And I will drop links in the chat for participants to all of our wonderful panelist organizations and to all of the resources they mentioned. So I'll be sure to let everyone know the website so they can look into this as well. Nikita or Rachel, is there anything you'd like to add about the first steps into higher education?
I'll jump in. And I mean, even the name of this conference, Pathways, and what Tina said, it's a pathway, it's a start. So I think some of the first steps that I'd like to say is just the reality of reconnecting to your identity as a student. I know that for some that we work with, you know, they haven't been to school for 20 years or 30 years or 40, whatever the case, and they feel like that's for them and not me. So one of the first steps is realize this is for you. Identify as a student. There are supports there. There are programs we mentioned. We have a college exploration. Maybe you don't know how do you choose a school? What location? How do you choose a major? You know, financial aid, the application, right? Also transcripts. If you haven't been to school for a while, how do I track down my transcript? I don't have the money for that. At John Jay, at the Institute specifically, like we'll help you with that. We have someone to help navigate that process, help you with the financial aid, enroll in some sort of structured pathway, right? Where you have the organizations like we're talking about and everybody on the call here that'll guide you through that process. Completing that FAFSA form and all of that, it's annoying, it's stressful, it's hard to understand. Also, the first step is understanding that you can get the support with the technology. So identify as a student, realize that there are supports there, and identify with the students. And even when you're in incarceration, you're about to come home, like the academic reentry that Rachel mentioned. A lot of that process starts when you're inside, right? So the process for beginning higher education is your reading, the way that you start connecting to resources. So that's what I want to add, and just know that there is financial support for you no matter your situation. There is support to guide you through all of the things that seems overwhelming, and we got you.
Yeah, I would just add, like, to echo what Nikita said, it's like you're not alone. You're not alone in this, and it might feel that way. And so connecting with the right organizations and understanding that, I mean, in New York, you know, I've been fortunate to grow up in this field with so many mentors, supervisors, and colleagues who have lived experience too and came through some of these programs and are now in leadership positions. And so it's really inspiring to be in a community with so many folks within New York State who have walked these paths. I myself am not formally incarcerated, but I think that understanding that there's a robust community network of people who have done this and are going to be here with you, many whom run organizations now in New York State because of the type of opportunity that's possible here. And as Nikita said too, there are folks who are here to help you think about gathering information, because again, the program that you had access to inside prison may be dependent on where you were incarcerated. And so again, this ability to imagine, it can feel very overwhelming, I think, moving from not having choices to then, you know, you meet someone like me who's like, now you can do whatever. And it's like, well, that's terrifying, right? And so figuring out how to make informed choices that make sense for you is something, again, that you don't have to do alone, and that there are people here to help you through that.
Thank you, everyone. You all made really great points, and I think this is a prime example. All of you here are talking about the support services that are available. Sometimes it's just a matter of finding out which one is best for you. You also mentioned, Nikita, how financial aid is a part of it. You know, wanting to pursue higher education is an admirable goal, but we all know that it's expensive to pursue higher education. So can any of you tell me a little bit about what state and federal financial aid options exist for formerly incarcerated students in New York State?
Yes, so you know, in 2023, when the restoration of that Pell Grant, you know, that's for any eligible person that you know, they can use that. So that Pell Grant. And then we also have New York State. We have that tuition assistance program. We call it TAP. That is funding. And the reality is, like I said, FAFSA, it's a lot of barriers. There's a lot of things in place. There's a lot of missing documentation. It's a lot of documentation you need to pull together. It's a lot of confusion about dependencies and different things like that. And again, getting your paperwork together. But with support, you have experts. You have people who are really passionate about that's what they do. They navigate you through understanding the forms, helping you fill it out, pull together the documentation. And individuals in the organizations, they come from different things. My specialty, for example, workforce development. So I know and can kind of guide my team as well as individuals that come to us on these academic majors, and these are the career pathways that can lead you here. And we talk salary. So you have this whole breadth of knowledge and support. But yeah, so TAP and the federal Pell Grants, and we work very closely with the financial aid departments and things like that. So we're always up to speed on that support.
Thank you, Nikita. Would you like to add anything to that, Rachel?
Yeah, I'll just add that, again, thinking about work study, if that's an available option to you, there are students I know who that really works well. If you can have a job on campus while you're going to school, and that's another way to get some money while you're attending school. I'll also just highlight that SUNY has the Empire Service Corps now too, which allows students to work up to 300 hours doing service work in New York State, doing some really amazing work. And I will highlight too that our office has two types of fellowship programs. One is called the Educational Justice Fellowship, and we really will be doing another round of applications in the next month or two. And that fellowship is designed for formerly incarcerated students who are attending in the free world now. And again, the idea is to provide some additional money so that you can do that in reentry. And then we also have a workforce fellowship slightly modeled off of the Empire Service Corps, but you don't have to be a currently enrolled student. You can just be a formerly incarcerated person. You don't have to be enrolled right now, where we match people with internships and workforce locations, and we pay the organization to pay you 300 hours of internship experience. And I'll just say this is a new program that we've recently implemented. And in the first semester, 80% of the students secured full-time employment during that fellowship, that internship semester. So, I think that, and again, I know my colleagues have other initiatives too. I think Nikita's going to talk about some as well, because there's so many great programs.
Yeah, and you actually brought up a great point, because the work study, but sometimes it's not necessarily like getting payment. Some programs you might get a small stipend, but some programs it may just be car fare to get to and from, or it may be that support, the academic support to get you acclimated to studying and writing papers and all of that. And then you may get a meal, you might get your breakfast, you might get your lunch, or things like that. So sometimes it's a small way that you're supported while you're moving forward. And then we have a program, for example, Navigator, let's say, where you're earning 6 credits. So you're not getting paid any money per se, but you are earning credits to help move you along. Additionally, we have a fellowship program called TAL Fellows, where if you're a graduate student and you're attending John Jay specifically, then your entire tuition is paid for that year, and you go to all of these different things. Natasha, I'm proud to say, is one of our TAL Fellow alumni, but so there's different ways. So I wanted to make sure that you don't just say, oh, I'm not getting paid for this, but you think about the little things. If you're getting your car fare, if you're getting your meal, if you're getting professional attire, whatever those little wraparounds are, that matters too.
Yes, those are great programs to mention. I also want to mention that the TAP program is a much more inclusive program than a lot of students are aware of. Right now, our part-time TAP program has expanded, so students can take sometimes one college class per semester. They have to talk with their college financial aid office about specific academic eligibility, but students don't need to go full-time. They don't need to take 3 classes to receive that money from TAP. So talk to your college financial aid office and see what's available to you. Additionally, there's also workforce TAP. So if you're doing a non-college degree program through a university, if you wanted to do an HVAC program or some other type of workforce program, there's also TAP funding available for that. So there really are a lot more programs than sometimes students are aware of. And yeah, we're happy to share them all with you. Additionally, everyone, our panelists made some great points about sometimes they're really complicated to navigate all these processes, whether it's getting the paperwork or just knowing what's out there or finishing applications. So I want to talk a little bit more about that as well. Navigating higher education is a very complex journey for any student. And, you know, formerly incarcerated students may have additional barriers that they have to overcome. So what is your opinion, my fellow panelists, about the biggest misconception or the biggest fear students have when pursuing higher education in this community? Tina, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I would love to. I would just share some of what my amazing students have told me. And it's basically the fear or misconception that I don't belong in college because my vision of what a college student looks like is not something that I fit. And there's also misconceptions about if I start this process and it's not coming to me as quickly as that, then that is also a sign that I don't belong. Um, so basically, it's that I don't belong, I won't belong, and that there's not going to be a community there that's with me, other than maybe just the staff that it's their job, you know, to help me. Um, that's one of the most, I think, it's in terms of just psychologically, I think it's one of the biggest blocks. And what I've seen is that when we have students visit some schools that we have partnerships with, where they have organizations that support formerly incarcerated or justice involved people, that changes everything. Because what my students have said is, I saw students that look like me, that talk like me, that sound like me. If they're doing it, I can do it as well.
Yes, that sense of community can be such a confidence booster for students. Yeah. That's so true. Nikita or Rachel, is there anything you'd like to share about misconceptions or fears?
I mean, I think Tina echoed that again, it's when individuals feel like college is not for people like me, right? There's a stigma. There's that imposter syndrome sometimes. There's institutional bias. Everyone's going to know, you know, and that's really not always the case. Fragmented systems. So the way that their corrections or higher education may have worked when they were inside and just kind of, you know, just they lost momentum if they were transferred or whatever the case may be. And then the reality is, I just want to work, miss. How many times I bet everyone on here has heard that. I just need to work. And then you're joining your families again. There's pressures. You're trying to get yourself together. There's housing. So all of these realities of survival as an adult, period, right? And then now you just kind of put that extra layer on it. Like I said, that lack of momentum, trying to kind of catch back up on being there, transferring the credits may be challenging and tracking things down. And, you know, just that trust factor of the advisement and, well, someone said this, but why is this? You don't see this? And, you know, those things. So sometimes it's just, again, seeing themselves as a student and getting over those biases and those stigmas and things that may exist and having people advocate for you in those environments so that you do feel that I too belong here.
100%.
I will agree with everything Nikita and Tina said. I also just want to bring in another element maybe to this question when we think about it, because on the other side of the coin, for students who have been successful inside prison education programs and come out and want to continue and are in a hurry to finish that degree, understandably, make up for lost time with all the competing priorities that come along with reentry. I think, and my colleague here, Will Lever from Minneapolis, is on the call and messaged us a question, right? Like, we have to understand, I have to understand as somebody who's not formally incarcerated that the lasting impact, the collateral consequences of incarceration, the lasting trauma is going to impact how how our students show up in classrooms and on campuses. And again, I spent the first half of my career just being so happy to see people coming out of prison because I'm like, you're out, thank God, it's over. And it's the beginning. It's the beginning of a really painful journey. And again, it is wonderful that people are free, and it is complicated. And so understanding the diverse needs and supports that students are going to need, and helping students set realistic timelines and goals, I think and I see it sometimes with, on the other hand, yes, as my co-panelists have said, right, like sometimes it's like, I don't think I can do it. On the other hand, there's like, I'm going to do it, and it's going to be exactly the same of how it was inside. And having to be in charge of your own time management, all these competing priorities, the fiscal management, all these pieces to juggle, it can feel really defeating and overwhelming. And again, kind of quickly turn people off to the whole thing. And so I just want to say that, like, I think, to Will's work, and I know work that Minnesota has championed, it's like we really have to think about the students' relationship to the world. We spend a lot of time, also, I've been thinking about this in reentry, right? Like we spend a lot of time preparing the students, to go back to the world. But there's a lot of ways our world is not ready to receive our students. And that's also where I feel like my job is at SUNY, is like, yes, we work with the students in the prisons and the programs, but yes, I'm here at SUNY System, and SUNY System has 64 colleges across the entire state. We have work to do to make sure that all 64 campuses are ready and willing to receive these students and ensure they're treated with dignity and respect and have a sense of belonging.
Yes, that's so true. And did you want to add something on to that, Nikita?
No, I agree completely, because in our work, we call it trauma-informed approach. But you're right, they're entering into environments that may not use the proper language, or the reading material might trigger something. And another thing is, kind of to the point you're saying, when the students do extremely well when they're studying, when they're incarcerated, they're on the dean's list, and they feel like they're just competing amongst their peers. But now they're going in and they're getting like a B+ or a C. And that's traumatizing as well, because they're used to kind of thriving in that quiet, protected study environment. And then, like you said, those competing realities and noise and environments. So there's just a lot that needs to be done when we receive them back.
Yeah, those environmental changes, along with all the other changes mentioned, is definitely a big impact. Kind of similar to that, what systematic issues do you see exist that prevent students from attaining higher education or succeeding in higher education? This could be related to the FAFSA, to the TAP, or it could be any other part that's involved in reentry in higher education.
I'll just go ahead and say that what I would like to bring into this conversation for this question is the challenges of rural reentry. So again, I've grown up in this field, and I've always looked to the Institute of Justice and Opportunity and my colleagues at CUNY and in New York City, who have really robustly defined what reentry support looks like for justice impacted people, and trying to apply some of those best practices in rural parts of the state. And it is a challenge. So transportation, housing, the partnerships that are required, right? So students need both academic and non-academic supports. And so, again, just with the sheer number of providers in New York City. Again, I know I'm not trying to make it sound like there's not challenges there, because of course it is, but just in some of our communities across the state where students are returning, we don't have the same breadth of community-based organizations with the expertise, the trauma-informed, the service delivery. And so I will say that is like, there are some real geographic disparities in terms of what access and opportunity looks like in reentry. And again, when it comes to those basic needs of housing and employment, I think that there are some real, unique challenges to rural reentry. And I think the other thing I just want to say is, like, another kind of system issue that exists that I think is worth naming is sometimes also like external measures of success. And again, I think that me being a system person, need to acknowledge that like we have our metrics of what we think success is, right? You talk about persistence, completion, retention, and those might be the ways we're measuring success, time to degree completion, but it's really about understanding what students define as their metric of success. Again, I heard one of my colleagues, Sarah Cushman from the Cornell Prison Education Program, talk the other day. She says, like, on paper, it looks like I'm the picture of success. I came home, I got this degree, I went out and got a master's degree. Like I check all the boxes. But what if you would have asked me that I really wanted to do in reentry was reconnect with my brother who I hadn't been speaking to, and I think that that's a really important point, that like sometimes we are the barrier because we're pushing people into a box of what we think they should do. And so really understanding individualized academic planning and just planning and support and conversation that's student led, that's really centers what it is a student's goal is and how they define success, helping them understand what success looks like for them. As you said, Nikita, the B+ can feel like such a blow, and so really helping understand that we don't necessarily know all the answers. And again, the program that somebody started in prison may not be the program they want to do when they go home. And just because there's many credits in, we want to help them make an informed choice, of course, about transfer and what aid they have left, and they're not wasting, credits or duplicating effort. But at the same time, we want people to do things that they really want to do and be excited about pursuing a dream and a goal they have. So I'll just leave that.
Thank you, Rachel. That was very insightful. Is there any other systematic issues that our other panelists want to touch on? Or if not, we can keep going as well, because there's lots of topics to discuss. Okay, that sounds good. I did just want to touch on one thing you mentioned, Rachel, as well. You mentioned how there are a lack of resources sometimes or support systems outside of the city in our rural communities. I'm from Long Island, so I know that, especially I'm in Suffolk, I'm way east. There's definitely a lack of resources there as well. And that's why virtual events like this, when we can host them and do them on a virtual platform, it does make it more accessible to our students who can't come in person. Of course, in-person personalized support is really important, but this flexible method is also really important. And at HESC, we have lots of events to help students with completing their FAFSA and TAP and understanding those complicated questions and understanding what documents they need. So that's not going to be an end-all be-all, because there are lots of other systematic issues, but if anyone needs help helping students with those issues, there are virtual appointments available for that. Okay, everyone, and just one other thing, and on that topic, what other solutions do you see in place right now that can help students overcome these barriers, whether it's CBOs or family support or whatever you've seen in your experience?
I mean, I guess I'm gonna say this for us as providers and in the field, just know that there's a lot of task force and consortiums and groups of professionals and organizations that come together, because the reality is barriers are predictable, right? Like we can sit around a room and we can predict what some of those challenges are. And because we can predict them, then it's easier for us to kind of try to collectively solve them. So I want you to know that our work here in New York State, New York City, community-based organization is to design systems that remove that guesswork so that you're successful, right? So I just want to kind of just emphasize that there's all kinds of groups and ways that pull us all together to be thought partners and to strategize and to collaborate. As Tina mentioned, I remember happily seeing her come in with one of her students coming into our college exploration and just wowed us with their presentation and everything. So that is collaboration. And that's just here on this call. So across the city, across the state, hundreds of us come together to make sure that we remove the guesswork so that you're successful.
Nikita, that is very important. And Since you all have direct work with students in one capacity or another, how are some ways that you identify and reach these students who could benefit from support services? Sometimes there's an access gap, or they just don't know that these exist, or even if they do know, they're not. They're hesitant to go and take advantage of these opportunities. So how do you identify and connect with these students?
I'll share that, we have, information inside all the correctional facilities about the SUNY Academic Reentry Services. We also have a public referral form that anyone can complete. So you can complete it for yourself when you're outside. Your family member could complete it while you're inside. An organization you work with, your college could work with it, that you work with, can complete it on your behalf. I'm going to put it in the chat just because, again, as I shared, we have referrals that come from inside the prison and then from the community themselves.
You. I believe that Youth Justice Network also has a similar system. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
so we have youth advocates. Sometimes they're called case managers. It's sort of a similar position, but we have youth advocates who go to Rikers a couple of days a week and establish relationships with some of the young people there. We also have a mobile outreach unit called Shifting Gears, which is it's kind of like a big purple van, and they park in neighborhoods where there's a high concentration of justice-involved individuals living there. They also sometimes go station themselves outside of a Department of Probation office. So just seeing this big purple van sometimes will catch your eye, and they have like a little sandwich board that says, want to work on your resume, want to get into school, like that kind of thing that draws them in. And then once the young people have signed up and are enrolled in the organization as a participant, and they work a little bit with mentors that they connect with in the organization or with their youth advocate, that person usually starts to see, I think this young person is ready for education, or they're talking about being ready for education. Could you just meet with them? Or this person is very anti-education. Maybe we'll just like talk to them and see what that's about and start to establish a relationship and engage around education and put a face to that whole concept that's not so unfriendly. So we really try to do it we're really a community-based organization, like we're in the community.
Yeah, that strategic outreach of just being in places where
Yeah,
you think that these students might be is going to be really important. Just meeting them where they're at.
for
Um,
sure.
Yes, I agree. And so as mentioned, facility-based engagement, kind of like number one, building trust and using people to have lived experience or someone they can identify to kind of get that message out there, that relatable authenticity, if you will, right? So just having students that just have that trust valuable, that credible message, just to kind of, and then word of mouth referrals. We have an alumni network. The Institute has been around for 20 years. So a lot of times we just reach back out to our alumni, our various programs, or we just kind of lean on the community organizations because that established relationship, the case manager, someone already has that relationship with the individual. And so now, there's that trust factor so that they'll trust us. So yeah, we have an outreach team. We do tabling, we do events and a lot of partnerships throughout the city. And so that's our primary approach.
Thank you so much, Nikita. You and Tina both mentioned about how after you connect with those students, it's really important to build trust with the students to make sure that they receive the information. Is there anything else either of you or Rachel would like to add about building that connection with students? So who do the students trust the most when they're looking towards higher education or looking towards information about financial aid and filling out those forms and reporting this sensitive information about themselves? How do you go about that?
I would say it's always somebody that they have a relationship with already. Whenever they start talking about college, it's not going to be like the first time that we meet them. So we already have that relationship of trust if we're talking about college. And then if they get to a point where our organization isn't staffed to meet that need, we will connect them personally with an organization that is staffed to meet that need. And that kind of like personal handing off, I guess you could call it, is really important to them. It's I think the more that they feel, in my experience, the more that they feel like there's a specific person with a name and a number who I can call, the less it seems like it's this big institution that you kind of have to figure out your way in.
Definitely. We do have a question in the chat as well regarding if any of these resources are available for students out of state who are considering going to New York, because we have such an abundance of amazing resources available. And I'll definitely throw that over to all our panelists. But I also want to mention that for financial aid purposes for New York State TAP, the student would need to live in New York for a full calendar year to establish residency. So if they would maybe just have to wait a little bit, and then they could receive New York State financial aid. And if you have any questions about that portion, I'm happy to send you some information after the panel.
And yeah, Natasha, that's a great point. So the services that we do at the Institute specifically, if you reside in New York City, you're there. So let's say someone came out of state and they're here, they can enroll. But when it comes time to actually get into do that college application, then that's where they're in state, out of state, which financial aid, that's where that's going to come to play. But anyone who is coming from out of state, new to New York City, they can enroll in any of our programs as long as they are formerly incarcerated or in any way impacted, and they have the availability and the commitment to thrive. So yes, they can come from other states and be a part of it. It's just that we would have to get that residency to qualify for the TAP and some of these financial aid resources that we're speaking about. And
same for SUNY. Yep.
Good. That's wonderful. Yeah, I didn't know that. So that's really great to hear. Thank you both. I'm just going to pivot just a little bit. I just want to ask you all one more question as well. So for students who were in prison education programs while they were incarcerated, maybe they didn't complete their degree, but they were enrolled and took some classes, how does that positively affect their reentry?
I mean, sorry. I mean, I think that the benefits of higher education in prison, you know, are so far lasting. I mean, I think when it comes to the ability to have started your degree inside, I mean, I will say this. So up until we started our academic reentry program, which is relatively new at SUNY, I would say it's maybe 18 months old. So before we had that, I would say I think it was 9 out of 10 of our students who were graduating inside prison, which meant that there was this huge drop off, right, when people come home. And again, we've talked about it, the competing priorities, the challenges of reentry, the collateral consequences of incarceration, you know, all these things are barriers. But I think that, you know, planting the seed and getting a head start on this academic journey. I mean, we have some places where students aren't going to be there long enough to get the degree. And we're like, we don't care. You can take one class. You could take 2 classes. This is where you might find, it might be your first experience with higher ed, but it won't be your last. And it puts you on a path to, you know, a lifelong learning journey. I also think that the community building and the networking that comes from being affiliated with the college programs is really powerful. So there's a robust, you know, again, alumni community or participant community, not just even for people who graduated, but the relationships you make with peers inside translate outside. As we talked about, there's a huge network of people who have come through all of these programs and are now employers and are looking to hire people they know who share a similar type of commitment and resilience that they have. And so they're reaching back into their alma mater or the alumni pool or calling us saying like, do you know anyone who needs the opportunity? And so I think that really the like community aspect of being connected to peers who are committed to a similar goal is really valuable. And I also just named too, it can be a challenge. The loss of that is a challenge. Again, I'm so happy when people get out. And it took me a while to understand that what they're leaving behind, especially if you've been in the college program, is 24-hour access to your peers who are all in the same situation as you, working on the same college degree. It's leaving a very intensive cohort situation. And then you're in the free world and you're cut off from some of those people inside. But what I will say is outside, there is a new, broader network waiting for you. And so again, I think that the social benefit, the same way, I mean, that for me in my own higher ed experience, it's the alumni, it's the professors, it's who your professors know, it's their friends who are employers, it's that kind of networking that's really valuable.
I agree. And another thing, is sometimes when they come home, it may be in the middle of like the admissions deadline. So there's this empty space as they wait to enroll. So that's a reality that we sometimes face. And that's why you have other programming, like we do tech programming, so they can kind of just work on their technology skills and some of the tools and platforms that they'll use when they get into an academic or career setting. So those kind of like placeholder programming until that application comes back around to apply, so that they're not just kind of out twiddling their thumbs. Another solution to what we do is we kind of embed that support in the facility. So Otisville specifically, I try to get as many as my team to go up. So the team in the community may go and do a workshop in Otisville, or so they start seeing these familiar faces, right? And so when they come home, they'll know more than just the one or two people and their instructors there. So the network, their peers are going to be different, but at least, oh yeah, I remember seeing you. I remember that time you came forward, right? And then that gives a little bit of comfort when they come to start that process, or how we can kind of guide them to something that'll be that placeholder until they get the application, the financial aid, and then, just pre-release, starting that financial aid, making sure they have the documents and things like that. So partnership, support, and visibility.
Yeah, these themes of trust and community seem to come up a lot. Very important parts of forming connections with students and helping them in whatever journey that they think is best for themselves. So kind of similar to that, maybe Tina, is there anything else you'd like to add as well on that note about how does being part of an organization of your peers with shared experiences help fuel trust and success among the students? Among the formerly incarcerated individuals?
With the young people that we work with, it's almost never just one staff member that they really connect with and that meets all their needs. It's really it requires a team. A lot of our staff are credible messengers, and so I think that means a lot to the young people we work with, because they understand that the mentors who are talking to them are not just talking from a book; they're talking from personal experience. Another thing that I would say is, when we have our youth advocates work with the young people so closely, they can do things to supplement some of the logistical needs outside of the purely academic or educational needs. So one example is I have a student who it took her about a year to get her New York State ID in order to take the test. And it took a year because she had to get like 15 different documents in succession in order to get it. And then that required, because she was a little bit underage, that required our staff working with her mom. And it just was such a long process. And there's no way that just the education staff could have done that on their own. And because this youth advocate stayed connected with the young person and with her family, we were able to get it, and she has her diploma now.
Oh, that's such a happy story.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's anything else that either of you want to add on that note about just being in an organization with your peers and how that fuels confidence in the students. Okay. Yes, we touched on that quite a bit. So just lastly, in your experience, if you can just give us one or two concrete, what resources have been most impactful in helping students and their education goals? And that's a big one.
Okay. At the Institute for Justice and Opportunity, I've seen the success in the academic reentry, where you start kind of having these conversations early within a few months before the actual release, pulling together letters and reference letters and different things that they may need. That's been successful. Having programs like college exploration and that reentry advising. We even take some of those workshop topics and things where we take it into the facilities, be it Rikers, be it the youth detention centers, right? We just take portions of that. That is helpful. That financial aid navigation, we'll take the financial aid team into the facilities or wherever we maybe go so they can start hearing it. So it's not foreign. That digital access support, we even take our technology classes into the facilities and or we kind of speak where they are and we give them the cool stuff too, like a little bit of AI and how you can do some time management or you can do your workout routine, but you're also learning how to use degree works and some of those proprietary platforms that you use when you're in CUNY or a higher education. And then we talk about resumes. They come home and we always talk about like that QR code. You try to go to a restaurant now, can't even get a paper menu. It's a QR code. So it starts with some of the technology that's used in the community, as well as the technology that's used for job search, as well as the top technology that's used in the classroom. So just, so we use that. So I think that's proven to be successful. And then we have a student success initiative program that we affectionately call SIP, where an individual could come in and we just kind of guide them into applying to be it a SUNY school or CUNY school or private school, it doesn't matter. And then you could basically be attached to that coach for your entire life. If you want to go to law school and grad school, you'll always be connected to that support with that coach. So, I think those are just a few things that just kind of come off the head that I can think of that have been proven to be successful as a resource or a tool. And then everything we said in the beginning.
Thank you. That's great. I think especially about the tech, like you said, that's not something that students can easily find information on. So knowing that they can learn how to use these really vital technology items that we use every day is going to be critical to their success. Rachel, was there anything you'd want to plug as a resource?
I would just say that again, it's really about collaboration and like to Nikita's point earlier about like it really takes a whole ecosystem of people and players, academic and non-academic, working together. And again, just want to say that is, I think, like those are all of our jobs, like in New York State, to think about how to build those collaborations and partnerships more. So that students can really be successful. So I will just plug the EOCs and Attain Labs, specifically in the ones that we're working with a lot more in upstate New York. Of course, CUNY and SUNY share resources and space, downstate too. But in terms of these Attain Labs are available to everyone, anyone. You don't have to be a student to access them. And there's a host of programs on computers that are free and available. These education opportunity centers, again, to the earlier point about GED or HSC completion and workforce training programs can be really great on-ramps, as well as a linkage to the community colleges. So I just want to make sure I plug those as well.
Yes, EOCs are great and they're located statewide. Thank you. Tina, was there anything that you wanted to just share as a resource for students? Okay, sounds good. So lastly, to close out our panel on a positive note, can each panelist offer a closing remark just about a message that they hope that will resonate with the audience, especially if we have any students listening or watching this back later?
In the chat, there was a question like, what would be some best practices or strategies when a formerly incarcerated person is in mixed, like in school or work sites with those who are not? I guess it goes back to what we said. You belong there. You don't have a scarlet letter, as they say, on your chest, so people aren't looking at you and think necessarily, right? So just really see yourselves in those environments. But what we also do is a lot of times we have group engagements where we get you in small groups and we start working, because in the facility, if someone leans over you too much, that's a violation. So you have to adjust to that environment. And so we just have opportunities so you can kind of gradually be around someone who's reaching to just get the butter to put on their bagel. They're not reaching, so it's just those giving those small moments so that they can ease into things that could be perceived as a trigger. And in work sites, specifically, we have something called the collective leadership supervisory training, for example, right? And so what we do is we work with managers and employers so that they can receive those who are formerly incarcerated in a way that doesn't isolate them. So, but we do that on the reverse as well. So I think it's just starting small, being able to advocate with work sites or in the classroom, and just kind of having the incarcerated individuals, our students, they're able to talk to someone and we can just talk through those scenarios. So I think that's what we would do, is just kind of just talking through it, just to answer the question that's in the chat, and just being able to inform others out there so that hopefully they won't have those traumatic triggers and things when they're in the environment.
Yeah, I think a lot of times that work sites and just other people just aren't aware about these things. So just that communication and dialogue is so important. And we're so thankful for you and our other panelists, because you're experts and you're champions and you're facilitating all of this. Yeah, would you like to share a message to formerly incarcerated students, Nikita, if they're listening, something inspirational for them?
I guess I'm gonna close with this. Many students impacted by the criminal legal system, they never had a fair chance from the beginning. So a lot of times we say a second chance and all of that good stuff. But we like to say, like, we want to make sure that, as I said before, we are thought partners together. We are doing everything we can to support you and make sure that you have a fair chance, despite the barriers, despite the reality, despite. Many students, like I said, they've never been given that first real chance to really succeed because of the environments they come from. Higher education is not just about access, it's about correcting inequalities that have happened in this system. It's about expanding pathways so that for not only increasing public safety, right, but helping you be more productive and marketable in the workforce and successful. You will succeed. Everybody on this call has open arms for you, and please go use the resources that are put in the chat. Reach out to us, speak to someone, and let's figure it out. If you know someone, you're not alone. That's all I can say. We got you.
Yeah, I think that this panel is a great example of that. There's a lot of support out there, and hopefully we can help you and support you. Rachel or Tina, do you want to add one final message?
I'm sure. I would like to say to any student who's listening right now, I'll just say what I told one of he's now one of my colleagues. He is also a credible messenger. And shortly after he came home from upstate and he started working at our organization, and we were just talking, and he was very focused on, I just need a job and I'm doing it. So, and we're talking about the possibility of college and why he might or might not be interested. And what I said to him is, you belong there, if you want to belong there, not only for what you might learn, but also for what you will contribute and how others will learn from you. And your voice is really needed in those spaces in ways that you may not, think about right now. So contribute your voice.
So true. I love those diverse perspectives is what college is all about in higher education.
Yes.
And that's how you make the change. Rachel, anything you'd like to add?
I'll be super quick. I'll just end. There's a favorite quote of mine from Bryant Stevenson that says, injustice prevails where hopelessness persists. Hope is our superpower. And so it's stay hopeful. We're here to help with that hope.
Yeah, and especially during trying times and when we're unsure what the next day is going to bring, hope is a bright light. Thank you, panelists, so much. Each of you contributed such wonderful resources and perspectives, and we really are so lucky to have you not just in this panel, but doing the work that you're doing. And thank you to everyone who attended tonight. And I hope that, it was beneficial to you. If anyone has any questions, we can open it up and give you a chance to speak.